All right, but let's go. Let's go through the games here. We're going to start Saturday at 4:30. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens. You know, Steelers get to win the division here with the win. They have the AFC North on the line. One of the surprises of the NFL season, to be honest, especially with the Ravens having their best regular season record in the NFL last year. Baltimore still favored by 6.5, though. Pittsburgh won the last matchup in Pittsburgh, but again, you're 9-5 Ravens against the 10-4 Steelers with the AFC North on the line Saturday at 4:30.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? The Pittsburgh won the last game, and the Ravens are still heavy favorites, despite not playing necessarily their best football in the last month. Okay, they've had games where they look great, obviously against the Giants, but they haven't looked all conquering. I mean, that's kind of a weird one, no?
It is. I mean, especially given the way Pittsburgh played against Baltimore. I think on one hand, last time around, you have Chris Boswell hitting 6 field goals. You have Justin Tucker with his field goal issues. You could distill it down to the kicker battle.
Right.
I think we highlighted coming out of that game, Pittsburgh did is the two teams that have done a really good job, I think, against Lamar Jackson in particular. Chiefs in week 1, and Lamar still kind of got his, and they were a toe away from scoring 27. But then Pittsburgh in that game, and Pittsburgh's had a history. I know Lamar had a pretty good game against them last year. Throw for throw, they had 7 drops, 3 in the end zone. But Lamar, since 2020, 2019 or so, not playing great against Pittsburgh. And in this game, last game, what we highlighted was Pittsburgh doing a pretty good job with gap control, rushing the passer, and just creating tight window throws. And Lamar didn't hit those tight window throws. And I know it's easier playing against the Giants, but there were some tight window throws that he hit last week against the Giants, right? It doesn't matter that it's the Giants when you're hitting Mark Andrews on the seam, hitting Rashad Bateman on the pinpoint corner route, so that's what Lamar needs to do in this game, right? Pittsburgh's going to make life tough. Can he make those throws this week?
Do you think that this is just a reflection? So obviously TJ Watt got hurt in the last game, and they're potentially without him. That's still up in the air. Like, is this just the injuries for Pittsburgh? George Pickens is still he's been out of the lineup for a little bit. He was doing some warm-up stuff that looked encouraging, like dynamic, hamstringy testing type of warm-up type stuff. Those are 2 pretty big players to potentially not be in this game for Pittsburgh. I don't know if that's moving the line that much, but it's definitely a factor in whether or not they would win or lose the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge factor, obviously. TJ Watt, the attention that he brings on the defensive side of the ball, we know that the edge rushers opposite him have been outstanding this year with Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig. So Watt bringing that attention opens things up on the other side. And yeah, Pickens, look, Russ, how has Russ made this offense better? It's throwing the ball down the field. And there's no better downfield receiver in Pittsburgh than George Pickens. So yeah, I think that's a huge factor here. Baltimore being at home versus in Pittsburgh last time around. I just think the matchup piece is interesting. And look, I don't want to oversimplify Baltimore and say they don't struggle against good teams. Remember what they did last year. Every time they had a good team thrown at them, they knocked them down pretty much until they ran into Kansas City. But they've offensively, this offense that has been cooking, struggled a little bit against Kansas City, at least from a consistency perspective, struggled against Pittsburgh. Sometimes the matchups just aren't in your favor. And I do wonder how much, that still leans in Pittsburgh's favor, with or without TJ Watt.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that, I think that defense for Pittsburgh has done a fantastic job against Lamar Jackson consistently for years now, and they have better players than they've had for a lot of that period across the board. Like, Lamar Jackson needs to have a good game against Pittsburgh to justify that kind of line.
He does. And look, you talk about the MVP being this narrative award. It is interesting. Lamar is having a better season than last year, Sam. I mean, He just is. Like, look at those stats.
But it's also
34 passing touchdowns against 3 picks. This is passer rating of 120.7. The rushing value that he brings. He's having a way better season than last year. And it's like, it's Josh Allen's award.
But that's like, because, you talk about it being a narrative type of award. Like Josh Allen, the last couple, the Rams game, right? Josh Allen, the narrative was Allen was unbelievable. That enhances his MVP candidacy. This is the type of game that would narrative-wise propel Lamar Jackson forward if he has a great game. Like I was arguing coming out of last week that there's not a huge material difference between what Lamar Jackson did and what Josh Allen did. And everyone's like, well, look, strength of competition. Like, yeah, but they were going against the defense, right? The Lions defense or the Giants defense versus the Lions banged up mash unit of a defense right now is probably not that different. And I don't think that the pressure, quote unquote, of the Lions offense being able to keep pace is that big a differentiator between the two. So my point is, even though both guys were great last week, I don't think one of them massively propelled themselves forward in an MVP conversation relative to the other, but other people do, right? And this is the type of game that would swing it back in the other direction. If Lamar Jackson balls out and looks phenomenal against the Steelers defense, well, now he's MVP, right? We're going to be like all the way through the game, the fourth quarter, the Ravens are up by 3 scores or whatever. Dan Orlovsky's going to be firing out MVP is wrapped up tweets in the other direction this time.
You already said it was wrapped up 3 weeks ago. It's like the Heisman voters sending in their Heisman vote on Thanksgiving,
right,
before the season's over. Like, what are you doing? Anyway, that's enough MVP talk for now. Lamar's playing great. Again, I think it's not as simple as saying the Ravens haven't played well against good teams. They crushed Denver's defense. They crushed Buffalo back when Buffalo, looked like, Buffalo's always been really good this year, but they destroyed the Bills on Sunday Night Football. That happened this season, by the way. That happened this season for the MVP voters out there. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen did play each other head to head this season. I know it was weeks ago. I know sometimes you forget it and you only remember the last 3 weeks at best. So anyway, I'm curious to know if Lamar and the Ravens can overcome, I think, some of their limitations where the Steelers defense has played them extremely well.
Yeah, I think Bateman being in there is a huge part of that. Like, I genuinely think, as much as he's been very maligned for a lot of his career, I honestly think he makes a huge difference to this current version of the offense when he's in there versus when he's not. I think that's a significant limiting factor on what the Ravens offense is capable of doing.
And as you mentioned, George Pickens' hamstring did not participate in practice most recently yesterday, and TJ Watt was limited. George Pickens adds a lot to this offense. I think if he plays, Pittsburgh's got a much better shot. But I think that is why it is 6.5 here, Sam. One last stat to throw out there. Intern Anthony highlights that the Ravens' 5 losses have been by a combined 22 points. That's it. So in this year of, they're not as good, they're not as dominant, it's a couple close losses. And they're very much, I think, the similar team than they've been last year, with maybe a little worse on the defensive side of the ball. Where are you going to go with this one? It is 6.5 right now. Baltimore favored.
Yeah, I'm going with the Steelers. I think I think it's a much closer game than that. I just don't really see the Ravens being 6.5 points favored even at home.
Well, you asked me if it was time to go contrarian, and I think it is. So
here it is.
Harry's taking Pittsburgh. I'll take Baltimore. I don't love it. I really think the matchup thing in Pittsburgh's favor keeps it close. But I'll take Baltimore because I'm playing the game. Playing the game here down the stretch.
Because desperate times calls for desperate measures. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.